Let me tell you the story of the rock of Otse. I was working in Botswana in Africa, and I was always busy throughout the week. But on weekends, I was free. I could go to play golf, or I could go swimming, or I could have coffee with friends, or go out for short drives outside the capital city of Botswana. One day someone told me about a place called Otse, not far from Gaborone, where he said there was a very high cliff, and the cliff was full of eagles who nested in the caves of the cliff. I was interested, and I decided to go there the next weekend. I managed to find a colleague, Baruti, from the Ministry of Trade and Industry. And I suggested to him that he accompany me to Otse for the morning trip. He agreed. He said he was from that region and he grew up there. I said, wonderful. So on Saturday morning, Baruti and I set off in my car for Otse. The drive was very nice. The weaver birds on both sides of the road were busy making their nests and feeding their young. They were totally occupied and very busy. We drove past them, the road was empty, and it was a pleasure that early morning. After a while, Baruti asked me, "Do you know about the history of Otse?" I said, "Not really. I'm just going there to see the cliff and the eagles." He said, "Well, Otse was a place where one of the bloodiest battles were fought between tribes many years ago. Thousands were killed. Today, Otse is a quiet little place with only the cliff and the eagles to watch over it." I said, "That's nice. I did not know about the history." He said, "There is also a rock in Otse, a massive rock, about which people know. It is quite unique." I said, "Wonderful. We will see the rock as well." As we drove and approached Otse, traffic from the other side started picking up. There were horse-drawn carriages coming from the other side, a few cars. And that meant that habitation was close by. I drove into Otse. It was a small place, sleepy. And very soon I could see the cliff in front of me. I drove a little further and parked. The cliff was right in front. We stepped out of the car, Baruti and I. It was magnificent, the cliff, very high. And one could see hundreds of eagles nesting on the cliff face, in caves, in crevices, flying in and out, maybe busy feeding their young or building a nest. I looked through my binoculars and I could make out the heads of the eagles and the strong wings when they rested. It was beautiful. So after a while I told Baruti, then let us go and see the rock and then we can go back. He said sure. But he said he wasn't very sure where the rock was located. Somewhere near the cliff. So I said we could ask. He said yes. And fortunately, although it was a Saturday, there was a government office open. We walked in. I think it was an irrigation department office. We walked in. And there was an elderly man in the office working. I asked him, can you tell us where the rock is? We would like to take a look. He said, that's no problem. You just go right down this road and turn right and the rock will be in front of you. You can't miss it. I said, thank you very much. As we were about to leave his office, he called out. He said, there is a wire fencing with a net around the rock. You can take a look at the rock from the outside. I suggest you don't go inside. So we said, fine, thank you. And we drove down the road and turned right, like he said. And there was this rock right in front. It was a massive rock. And it stood all by itself. Normally you find rocks in clusters. But this one was not like that. It stood solid by itself, the size of a small building. Baruti said, now that we've seen the rock, let's go. I said, see, we have come this far and the gate around the rock is open. It's not locked. So if they wanted no one to go inside, they would have locked the gate. But it's open. Why don't we go inside a little bit? I can see a dirt track. Drive around and come back and then leave. Baruti said, all right, if you wish. So I got out of the car, opened the gate, and slowly drove inside. And we slowly drove inside, down the dirt track. The ground initially was clean, but as soon as I entered, I started feeling uncomfortable. As I drove up, the discomfort increased tremendously. I could feel a negative energy coming straight at me from the rock. It was something that I had never experienced before, anywhere. Slowly I drove further up, and I noticed that my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. And I noticed that on the side and back of the rock, the place was filthy. Garbage and huge bones of animals licked clean, lying around. By this time the discomfort was so strong that I stopped. I couldn't go up further. Baruti asked me, are you all right? I said no. He said, do you want to go back? I said yes. He said, in that case, don't go around the rock, back out the way you came. I said, all right. And slowly, I backed out of the enclosure. I almost crashed into the gate, but managed to avoid it just in time. As soon as I left the enclosure, the discomfort ceased immediately. Immediately. And I drove up to the road and parked there. Baruti looked at me and said, "Are you all right now?" I said, "Yes." I said, "What is this thing? Why is it so unpleasant?" He said, "Let me tell you. We can have some coffee." I said, "Yes." I took out the flask and we had coffee in the car. Baruti said, "This rock is very, very old. People say that it was formed when the earth itself was formed. And that the bloody battle that was fought here, killing thousands of people, was not far away from this rock." He said, people say that the not so good people who were killed in the battle, their spirits live in this rock. Since, as you know, we Africans believe that our spirits live in rocks. So the rock contains spirits of thousands of people. Most of them not very good. I said, "What about the eagles?" He said, "When the battle was fought, there were no eagles in the cliff. After the battle, the eagles appeared. People say the eagles are the spirits of the good people who were killed in the battle. And today, they keep an eye, they keep a watch over the rock and scream when they see people coming and going." Did you notice that when you were entering, the eagles were screeching very, very strongly? I said, "I didn't. I was so engrossed." He said, "Yes, even now you can hear them screeching very loudly." So they say that the eagles are the spirits of the good people. They watch over the rock throughout the day, all around the year and forever. I said, "But the door, why did they leave the gate of this enclosure open?" He said, "It's not to prevent people like you and I from entering. It is to allow something to leave the enclosure if it wishes. That is why the symbolic gate is left open." "You are a strong person," he said to me. "That's why you are unaffected." Many others have even worse experience. I said, "Shall we go? I mean, it's getting late." He said, "Yes." I turned around and drove towards Gaborone. We traveled in silence, watching the weaver birds like we did when we were driving up. When I reached Gaborone, I dropped Baruti in his house and drove up to my place in Marwapula. My guard, Tiny, was waiting for me. She asked me, "Where have you been? You never stay away for this long." I didn't say anything. She said, "Lunch is ready." She doubled as my cook. So I said thank you and sat down to lunch.